Good evening everyone. Today we are going to discuss an opening known as the Petrov defense. Okay, let's switch the board. Okay, Petrov defense is also known as the Russian defense. It starts with the move e4, e5, knight f3 and the move knight f6. Knight f6. Okay, now the main move for white is to take the pawn on e5, and after knight takes e4, this is also a line. This is also known as the Kolmov gambit. Okay, the main move is queen to e2. So there is a pressure on the knight and also on this e file. So if you move your knight, let's say to f6, then you kind of lose your queen with this move. Okay, so the main move for white is to play the move queen to e7, and after this we play d6. You see that this queen is kind of without defense, so that if the knight moves, then we capture the queen. So the main move is to play the move d4, and after pawn takes, and if queen takes, then we happily trade, and after this position is fine. And after, let's say we develop with tempo, bishop to, we are putting pressure on the c2 pawn. Bishop to d3 is worse because we take this bishop and we isolate these two pawns. We can later put pressure on the knight with knight to c6, and let's say if white tries to be greedy and defend this pawn, then we put pressure with the move knight to b4, and there is attack here. There is also this. In one game the game continued with this, and then black just long castle, and there is no good way to defend the d3 pawn. So even this queen trade is good for black. What happens if pawn takes pawn? Then we play knight to c6. We develop with tempo. We are attacking the e5 pawn. There are three responses for white. White can either play bishop to f4 or can play f4, or can pin the knight with the move bishop to b5. We will see each at a time. So first see what happens with the move bishop to f4. Here we play the move g5. See, we are immediately threatening to take the bishop, the very bishop which is defending the pawn. So once he moves, now we play f5. See, en passant is not an option because the queen is undefended, and let's say wherever the queen moves, we play this. And even if this crazy move bishop to b5, don't need to be worried. First defend. We are also preparing to long castle and then take the bishop. This bishop is not going anywhere. Okay, let's go back. So as we saw, bishop to f4 is a pretty bad move. So what else should we play? Sorry. Let's see bishop to b5. Here we play the move bishop to d7. We are preparing long castle, and let's say now white tries to play the move f4. Now we long castle, and when white short castles in this position, this is a small trap. With queen to c5 check, we are attacking the bishop as well as the king, attacking two pieces at the same time. So castling is a huge mistake in this position. So after f4, white should continue with the move. Let's say after it's black to move, black long castles. White cannot castle at this point with the similar threat. So after knight to c3, now black should play the move knight to d4, and after bishop takes bishop, we take with the move, and there is some pressure on the, also the queen is kind of misplaced. We can already play f6 or the move queen to c5 if white short castles in this position. This is quite good for black in this position, slightly better for white of course. Let's come back. So here goes the Kholmov gambit. Okay, now after e5, knight f3, knight f6. What happens if white doesn't take this pawn? Instead plays something like knight c3, defending his own pawn. Now we go with the same move, knight to c6, and after the move bishop to c4, many of your opponent will let's say immediately play the move. Black should play the move knight takes pawn. You see, this center fork trick now comes into play with the move knight takes c4, and after this knight we play, this is not a piece sacrifice, we will regain our material with the move d5. So let's go back a few moves before. White sees that if it captures this knight, d5 is coming, he is going to lose one piece anyway, so why not go this way, bishop takes f7 and then take the knight. And after this, when white recaptures with the move knight takes e4, we play the move d4. This d5 move, white allowed black to get a strong center. This knight is kind of misplaced, and there is, although this king looks weak, but there is nothing that white can do. He can also give a check with this move, but after this, these two knights are kind of misplaced. For example, if white castles in this position, e4 is already winning for black, because once this knight moves, we take this knight. This is, although see the bar, it's clearly giving black a huge advantage, plus minus 1.8. White is lost in this position. So going back, okay, what is white can do? White can play the move d3 to stop this move, e4, stop this pawn from getting advanced. We play h6, and after knight to, let's say, h3, many of your opponents will be tempted to play the move bishop takes knight and destroying this pawn structure, but it's not good. Instead, we are going to play the move bishop to g4. We are pinning this knight, and there are some threats of e4 in the air. The best move for white in this position is to play the move, as according to Lichess database, is play the move knight h2 g1, defending this knight, reinforcing. Now we go e4, and this is completely winning for black in this position. And after e4, pawn takes. See this knight, this pawn is kind of attacking the knight which is pinned to the queen in this diagonal. So white must trade the queens, and after this, now see, this knight still can't move, because if the knight moves, let's say here, then there is a checkmate. So the knight cannot move in this position. After this, it's the best move is to play this and then this, knight to b4. The game is lost. There is no good way to defend. Even if you try to defend this, there is this knight takes c2, and the game won't last long in this position. So this center fork trick is very good in this position. So bishop takes f7 is a losing mistake, even though many of your opponents will try this move. So how to play this position? And after the move d5, the real question is, how should white continue? White should continue with the move bishop to d3. The bishop is much more stronger than a knight, so white should defend this bishop first. If takes, we take back, and this is quite good. This position is clearly equal according to engine. This is the perfect way. Okay, now let's go back. Let's flip the board. Let's see it from the white side. e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, and after knight takes e5, the best move is to play the move d6. This is the modern theory. And after this, we take back, and after the move, let's say knight to c3, black played a blunder with the move bishop to b5. This is a very famous game of Anand playing with the black pieces in this position. His opponent was a very strong GM, and Anand just blundered with the move bishop to f5. Anand got lost in very 6 moves or so. The winning move is to play the move queen to e2. This pinning down this knight. Although it seems that the queen to e7 solves all the issue, but there is this problem with the move knight to d5, and the queen is under attack, the c7 pawn is under attack, also the move d3 is coming, so the queen has to defend, and then the d3. This move kills the knight instantly. So bishop to f5, never play this move, it's a huge blunder. After the move knight c3, you should trade this knight, and this is quite equal position. And after this, we play bishop to e7, bishop to d3, and the game is equal. The game goes on. White castles, black castles. And now don't go for this trick with bishop takes h7, because it won't work. Grid gift. Because after king takes h7, this g5 square is currently controlled with the queen and the bishop, so this won't work. You will lose a piece. Okay. Okay, let's see what happens. A game between Levon Aronian and Arjun Erigaisi. Levon Aronian was playing with the white pieces, and Arjun Erigaisi was playing with the black pieces. And after this, knight f6, knight takes e5, d6, the knight goes back, knight takes, d4, d5. This is the main line of the Petrov defense. And after bishop to d3, Arjun Erigaisi continued with the move bishop to d6. This is not a threat, because of, if you take here, then pawn takes pawn and this knight has to move. Taking is not good. So instead white choose to castle, black does the same, and now c4, attacking this center. If you take, then this knight hangs, so you can take. You have to reinforce with the move, c6. Now queen to b6. There is some kind of pressure on the here as well as on the b7 pawn. Black could also continue with the move after c4. Bishop to, this is also good. This is also equal, slightly better for white because of pawn takes pawn. So after c4, c6, and the move queen to b3, we are kind of putting pressure on here. So the base continues with the move queen to d7. See, you can't take this pawn twice because of bishop takes h7 and you lose your queen. You can't take this pawn twice. And after this pawn is undefended. This pawn is quite very much defended. This game continued with the move knight to c6, the queen moves, the bishop developed, and the game goes on. This is how black should play in the Petrov defense. Perfect way. Okay, now let's see Stafford Gambit. The move e5, e5, knight f3, knight f6, and the move knight takes e5. And after the move knight takes e5, the Stafford Gambit starts with the move knight to c6. See, black is down a pawn. In return, black is offering a pieces exchange. So white happily trades, and after this the question remains what to do with this pawn. Let's see pawn to e5. The knight jumps to the e4 square. Now to many of your opponents this knight may be annoying, a very strong piece, so they will try to get rid of this with the move d3. They are attacking your knight, but if you are playing as black, you don't need to move this knight. You can play the move bishop to c5. Now what happens if pawn takes knight? Now your opponent is going to lose his queen. The move this, and the queen is lost in this position. So d3 is a huge blunder in this position, and so has the e5 move. So how to defend this pawn? d3 seems a logical move. Now we play the move bishop to c5. We are kind of putting pressure on here, and the game continues with the move h3. Now we play the move h5. Bishop to a2, bishop e2. Now we play the move queen to d6, a slightly cunning move. And if white castles, now we play the move knight to g4. Now see, we are kind of threatening a mate with this queen as well as with the knight. So white has to do something about it. If white plays this, then we take this and the mate on the next move, because this pawn is kind of pinned by this bishop. So white can't recapture. So what to do? If pawn takes, then we take back, and not to forget there is a mate. If this, then the same old story, queen takes pawn, and this is a checkmate. So the last option is to take with the bishop, then this, and even if your opponent tries with the move e5, do not take this pawn, or else this, your queen is lost. So instead play the move queen to g6. This is by far the best move, and there is this pressure also. This, if you play this, then this, you cannot defend this pawn. Yeah, black is clearly winning. So if you are facing Stafford Gambit, e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight takes, knight to c6, and after knight takes, pawn takes. The question is to defend this pawn. We will defend this pawn, and after the move, let's say h5, we play this move bishop to h3, and we are not going to castle here. We are going to wait. We are going to develop all our pieces, and the main idea for white is to castle queen side, because once you castle king side, there is all sorts of knight g4, queen d6 ideas, because this rook file is getting opened up. And after this, black will try this move bishop to c5, and now we are going to play the move knight to c3, and white is clearly better in this position. And even if this move, then bishop to e3, and the next move is queen to d2, and we are going to castle long. So this is how you should beat the Stafford Gambit in this position, with the move knight to c3. Always remember this move, knight to c3, and we are not going to castle long, short, because if you castle short, there are all sorts of tricks, as you saw. Okay, after bishop to c3, never play this move bishop to e3. This is a kind of, although this move looks good, but it's kind of a double pawns, and this diagonal is quite weakened, so black will try to exploit this diagonal. So instead play the move knight to c3. This is quite good, and black has nothing in this position. Even if he tries to play this move knight to g4, we can take this knight, and after pawn takes, play the move queen to e2. There is nothing Yeah, we are going to play bishop to e3 on the next move. Prepare long castle. Let's say bishop to e6, bishop e3, and we are preparing long castle. Yeah, white is clearly better. After this, even we can take and then long castle. White is clearly better. There is no such Stafford Gambit tricks. You have to play the correct moves in this position. And many of your opponents won't know this theory, and they will try to castle short in this position, and that leads to the dangerous Stafford Gambit. Bishop c5, castling long, and then here we go. After the move, let's say h3. Okay, castling. Knight to g4, h3, and now this queen to d6. This is a losing mistake. You can't even play f4 because this pawn is kind of pinned with this bishop. And this is a designable position for black. Okay, let's go back. Knight f3, knight f6, knight takes, and the move knight to c6. After, oh, you can apply this trick from white also. Okay, wait a minute. And after knight f6, you can play knight to c3, or you can play the move bishop to c4. The same old trick. If black tries to play knight takes e4, then we play knight to c3, and if knight takes, pawn takes. Now see, this position as we saw from the black's perspective, now it's from the white perspective, and after e4 we play this same old move, and black is losing in this position, knight to e5. So, and if d6, then this knight to g5, and the f7 pawn cannot be defended. Black has to play something very ugly move, bishop to e6. We can take this bishop with the knight, and after pawn takes, bishop takes. This position is clearly winning for white. So it's kind of a tricky move. After knight takes e4, always play this move, knight to c3. If your opponent takes, then takes. And he will face some hard time defending this pawn. If castle, and if bishop here, then rook to e1, and the game goes on like this. Hope you enjoyed today's class. Okay, you have learned a lot from the Stafford Gambit. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.